Okay, we are recording. So folks, welcome to one of the last series of the first half of the year. We've moved this session a couple of times to be able to allow some other presenters. So Julia, Rob, and Stephanie, thanks so much for your flexibility and your preparedness for this. This was actually requested when I went out to the folks for feedback in terms of topics they were looking for. Virtual presentations, given that that's pretty much what we do all day, every day, and some public speaking tips and tricks. So when we looked at, who are the people to deliver this, quickly, the three of you, names came to the surface, and really just happy to have you present to the group today. And I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Julia to take it away.
Actually, no, you're going to turn it over to me.
Okay. Julia looked like she was ready to go. All right, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you. So thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Tammy. So thanks, everybody, for the opportunity to present to the group today. My name's Rob Taylor. I'm a sales manager at Xerox Digital Sales. I manage our live streaming demo team, as well as our 800 Ask Xerox sales team as well. And I am joined today by two fantastic presenters in their own right. Stephanie Samard, who's a partner manager, and of course, Julia Matthews, who is a business development manager, both of whom are Vista graduates. Incredibly humbled to be on this meeting with these two fantastic professionals. So we all have a significant amount of presentation experience. So hopefully we don't trip over too much as we're going through the presentation today. We are looking for your active participation in the chat, so feel free to jump in with any questions, comments. There's going to be some polling as we go through, and we're going to have some fun and interaction as we go through this as well. So just to take a quick walk through the agenda, first topic we're going to cover is the advantages that virtual presentations have, how to maintain your virtual presence, how to communicate virtually. We've got some additional housekeeping tips as we go through, the arc of a virtual meeting and how that sort of goes from beginning to end. And then tips for speaking in person. Obviously, there are a few things that are different about trying to manage a room of people versus manage a Teams meeting. There are obviously complications in both circumstances, but we'll go through a little bit of that. And then we'll finish up by offering some resources. And if we can go to the next slide, that's perfect. So we're going to start off with a poll. So this should have generated a pop-up on your screen, I believe. So the question in the poll is, what virtual presentation skills would you most like to improve on? So if you could go ahead and put your answer in that box. And we will see what some of the responses look like. I'm liking this improvisation. Demonstrations, speaking fluently. Oh, I see visuals and slides up here. Filler words. Yep. We may need some extrapolation on what's meant by that one. Very good. Looks like the audio portion of delivering the presentation is what's coming out the most. So we'll have to make sure that we cover lots of content around how to speak fluently. Perfect. Okay. Getting good participation. Give that another few seconds for the last few people to chime in. Redundancy in message. Okay. We don't get any of that with any of our presenters at Xerox, I don't think. Okay. Great. Well, I think we've got a good representation. So I think Julia, I'll hand it over to you next.
Over to Stephanie.
Stephanie. Perfect. Everybody wants to go to Julia.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for your great answers. There's a lot of stuff in that poll that I really wanted to get better at when I first started doing virtual presentations as well. When I came to Xerox, I was in a sales management position before that, and I was in customers' faces all the time. So this was definitely a new experience for me, working virtually when I joined 3 years ago. And I think our presentation today is going to cover off a lot of the topics that did come up. So we're going to cover the advantages of a virtual presentation first. There are a lot of people that are always saying how being in front of a person face-to-face is best, but there's definitely some circumstances where we know we can't be, and that's where these virtual presentations really come into play. There are some great advantages to doing a presentation virtually as well. So doing things virtually can save on cost for both participants and organizers. There's no need to pay for traveling, rentals for cars, hotels, or boardrooms. This can really help with our second point too, that it can increase participation to meetings, conferences, training sessions that are virtual. People don't need to see if they can afford to do it or if they have the time to travel there. They just need to log in wherever they're at. We can complement in-person events as well and be used as follow-up sessions to these in-person events. A lot of virtual meetings also provide access to multiple subject matter experts that may not be able to be in person altogether at once. A perfect example of this is the demo room where we bring customer specialists and sales reps all together from all over North America. And I'm sure Rob is going to speak about that a little more later. Employees that are spending less time traveling to events can also save on the time that they can focus on other work tasks, which is really important for all of us that know that we have 1,001 tasks to do. And virtual events also allow us to learn new skills that we might not have gotten to learn if we couldn't be there in person. And it also allows those presenting to track who attends. The ability to attend last-minute sessions is also a great advantage. Within seconds, you can be there as opposed to having to travel. And one of the biggest things that Xerox likes to take advantage of is recording and sending out virtual presentations so that those that aren't able to make it can listen in at a more convenient time. We can even repurpose those recordings and use them as training material. So some really great advantages to doing things virtually when needed. Do you guys have any questions on any of those advantages?
Nothing in the chat as of right now.
Awesome. Well, if you guys do have questions, throw them in the chat and we'll get to them later. The next thing we're going to look at is virtual presence. Many people think that because you're hiding behind a computer screen, you need to do less with how you come across in a virtual meeting, but that really isn't true. Your virtual presence still says a lot about you and who you are representing as a company. And there's a few factors that can play a big role in how you are viewed virtually. So we're going to look at 5 key characteristics here on the slide of virtual presence. The first one is voice. You should always make sure you're speaking in a clear voice and that you can actually be heard. Using a varied tone is important too. You don't want to be that presenter that makes everyone fall asleep because you're really monotone. It's a really bad way to present to someone. The second is pace. You want to make sure you don't rush through everything you want to say because obviously you want to pause to make the points and let others talk, and try to vary the pace of the meeting by using questions and polls like the one we started with. Language is the third characteristic. So make sure you're talking to the level of your audience. Try not to use slang words or, choose more common, well-known words instead. As Xerox employees, we tend to use a lot of acronyms to a point that many people actually have lists explaining what they all stand for. So if you use them on external calls, it's just going to cause confusion. And I normally try not to use them on internal calls either. There's always newer people on the calls and they might not know what they stand for. I know I appreciated it when the slang words and the acronyms weren't used when I started. Filler words are another thing which came up in our poll. We see this a lot of people using so. There's just a couple we hear a lot, but try using words to try not to use words just to take up space. If you need a second, just pause and think of the word that you need. What are the words that you guys are guilty of using? I see some of them in the chat there.
Yeah, we've got right,
So
so,
My big one was definitely so.
like, yep,
is a big one for sure.
Because I might not know.
right.
Very true. Awesome, guys. Those are some great ones. And that ties into our fourth characteristic, which is silence. Many people are really scared to let silence be a part of their calls, but when you use it in an appropriate way, it can be really beneficial. Waiting for a person to give an answer or using it as a time for reflection are really both good silence. You don't just want to stop talking for a really long period of time and not explain why you're doing it, because then obviously people are going to think you forgot what you're going to say. When presenting virtually, it's really important to be on camera when you can be. That's why we're all on camera today, especially when you're presenting. It's also important to know where your body language and eye contact are. So how many times have you watched like a presentation where someone is clearly reading from a second screen and has the side of their head facing the camera the entire time? I know I've been in some, so make sure you're sitting upright, that you're looking at your webcam or your screen. Try not to have written notes down below where you have to look down at them all the time. Put them on the screen and use natural movements. Some of us talk with our hands, which is fine, but don't try to do it all the time because it's really going to make it awkward. I'm going to jump right into the next slide and then we'll take questions at the end of this one. So for virtual communication, you know now from virtual presence what to be conscious about when you're on a talk or you're preparing for something, but there's just a few things you need to make sure that come across when you're presenting virtually or preparing for a virtual presentation that have to do with communication. The first is to be present. Be aware of when your call starts and try to join a bit early if you can. You don't want to be late to your own call. Be aware of time zones. If you know you're in a mixed geography for your crowd, pick a time that works for everyone. Having a call with a Western living customer and doing it at 9 a.m. Eastern is not going to give you a very welcome response from your customers. So just make sure you're paying attention to that. Also, close out distractions. Put your team on presenter mode, close out your email so that you're not distracted by incoming things on every different screen that you have. And make sure you listen to the emotion coming across from your attendees and pivot if you need to. Customers that are really upset aren't going to be able to be presented to the same way as someone that's going to be really happy. The second point is basically asking and being able to reach out. So before the meeting starts, send out your agenda if you require your attendees to complete something such as required learnings or readings. Share your expectation for the meeting at the beginning and try to create connections throughout the meetings. Being expressive is the third point. Delivering things in small bites and adding visual aids really helps. That's why PowerPoint is such a big aid these days. If you jump on a 4-hour long call where everyone's just talking, chances are you're going to lose half your audience attention within the first half an hour. And create connections and use metaphors thoughtfully and make sure they make sense about what you're talking about. If you're trying to sell a car, talking about an elephant might not be the best use of your time unless you can really tie it all together. So make sure you use your virtual presence that you learned in speaking clearly and slowing down if you need to. And the last point is really important. It's knowing yourself. We all say fake it until you make it, but really please don't fake it. Play to your strengths. If you're not sure on something, get a subject matter expert to join you on the call and they can answer the questions that you can't. Understand when you might have a bias on something as well and keep things on even ground when you can. And most importantly, allow time for others to talk. If they're talking, try not to talk over them because what they have to say may be very important. And communication is a skill that many of us will constantly work on throughout our careers here at Xerox. So just keep in mind that these are a few things to remember. Does anyone have any questions on the virtual presence or virtual communication skills? Anything in the
Yeah.
chat, Rob?
Nothing in the chat. Not a really a question for me, but more of a comment with regards to your time zones. I think it's usually a great idea to avoid time-specific greetings too. So instead of saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, you can just say hello, everybody, and then that you don't have to worry about, oh, it's actually not morning for me anymore.
That's a really good point, Rob.
Agree with that completely. Or if you start with good morning, just continue forward. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That's a good recovery.
Whoever it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see. We've got something here from Abby. You may appear more professional when you say, let me get you that answer instead of spewing random stuff. Yeah, so to your
Very,
point
very
around
true.
don't try and fake it. That's usually a good idea. Use scheduling assistant so to make sure you're not double booking people. I know I've been guilty of that, particularly with my team in the past of booking over other things that they have because I haven't checked their schedules. So good feedback.
Another big one too is remember to ask your colleagues if you need help, right? Set up a meeting with them, go over your presentation, check, all of your tech with them and ask them for their feedback. It's really important when you're not sure of something. A lot of our colleagues have done that 1,000 times for each one of us. So keep that in the reminders too. So being a virtual employee and doing 98% of my meetings virtually, I've learned a couple other tips and tricks I thought we would share. A lot of them seem like really common sense, but we see it happening every day. The first one is please dress appropriately and wear something you would wear to meet a client. Business casual or business attire. Ripped clothing, PJs, and stuff you would wear hunting are not the look people are going for. And if you're going to wear your PJ pants, please make sure you're not going to stand up on camera. We see that one daily. Also, keep in mind you were on a screen. Depending on the resolution of your screen and the people watching, certain patterns can come across as really busy and they take away from your presentation. So keep in mind that solid colors work best. And if you don't have the ability to be on a webcam, make sure when you're presenting, you take your picture and you put it on your title slide so people can visualize who they're talking to. It's really important. When it comes to grooming, make sure your hair is not limiting your visibility. And also keep in mind that long facial hair that covers your mouth may make it hard for someone who reads lips to follow along. That's where transcribing your meetings, if you have the ability to, might really make good sense in that situation if you don't want to cut your mustache shorter. Your location is also going to play a big role. Avoid doing a meeting in heavy trafficked areas where people won't be able to hear you, and choose a background that isn't going to draw someone's eyes away from you. You don't want to have, a cartoon in the background that is going to be a great conversation piece for, minute 1 to 3, but might take away from your meeting later on. Make sure your room has really good lighting. You don't want to show up as a shadow, and make sure you appear well in your camera. You don't want to speak to someone's neck or their stomach. You want to see their face. So those other areas aren't really ideal for setting up a meeting and talking to somebody. And most importantly, we want to make people aware and see if they can hear you, if they can see you. So as I did at the beginning of the meeting, just make sure people can see your slides so that everything on the screen is good to go. Does anyone else have any other tips they want to share?
I would just say with regards to camera placement, I mean, the tendency for most people is to put their laptop on the table and then turn the screen up, which means the angle that you're getting is from below and you end up looking up the person's nose the whole time, which is not the most flattering angle for most people. Turn your fans off, Abby says. Okay, if you're in a warm location, that can really come through on the headset of the mic. Good one. Anybody else? Oh, control facial expressions. Watch those nonverbals. Good one, Steve. Yeah, I've been caught more than once, not forgetting that I was on camera and somebody says something that I maybe don't 100% agree with, and that is telegraphed clearly from my facial expressions. So that's a good one.
I think the other thing, Rob, too, is really look like you're being present in the meeting, even though, you may be presenting, you may be attending a presentation. It's very easy to see when people are multitasking, especially when they're on camera and they're, obviously disengaged.
Absolutely.
Being present is very important. Awesome.
Gotcha. Oh, and watch your backgrounds on the webcam using the branded Xerox backgrounds or having a background that's not busy if you're going to not use a background at all.
How about no avatars? Can we do those? I find those very
the
distracting.
jury's still out on that one, Tammy. I don't know.
Oh, I find them uber distracting.
You're gonna have to fight Catherine for that one.
I know.
100%.
Awesome tips, guys. I'm going to turn it over to Julia, who's going to take us through an arc of a virtual meeting.
Perfect. Thanks, Steph. So the arc of the virtual meeting is the structure of your presentation from the beginning to the end. And the stages really ensure that your presentation is clear and engaging and that you're communicating effectively with your audience. So there are going to be variations on the topic of the presentation, what that arc looks like. But in all presentations, you should set the stage, engage and include your audience, and close the show. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what those stages look like. So when you're setting the stage, you really want to start with an opening statement that's going to captivate your audience before introducing yourself and everyone in attendance. And it's really important to introduce yourself to establish credibility and introduce your audience as well to show them respect and to make them feel included in your meeting as well. After everyone's introduced, you should start by telling everyone what the purpose of the meeting is and walking them through the agenda so they know why they've been invited to the meeting and what they can expect throughout the call. And this is something we're going to talk about throughout, but you should always at the outset check for understanding to make sure that your audience is on the same page as you from the beginning. So make sure that they understand why they've been invited to the meeting and that they're comfortable with the agenda. So just continue to check in with your audience throughout. At the very beginning too, you should set expectations about participation. So this could be whether you want people's cameras on or off, if the audience has been muted, or whether you're going to mute them, if they're allowed to come off mute throughout to ask questions, whether you want them to use the chat function for Q&A. Really letting people know from the outset how you want them to participate is going to make them feel more comfortable sharing thoughts throughout your presentation as well. It's also a good idea at the beginning of a presentation to ask people to check in. So you could ask, if it's a larger group, people how their day is going and to use a heart reaction if they're having a good day. Or with a smaller group, you might do an icebreaker activity where everyone has the opportunity to speak. So anything you can do to really get your audience comfortable at the outset is going to increase engagement throughout your meeting. So the second stage of the ARC is engaging your audience. And Steph talked about this a little bit before, but you can use sharing tools like PowerPoint or Google Slides, but you also don't want to overdo PowerPoint. So you don't want, a 1 hour meeting with 60 slides, because that's definitely going to bore your audience. So make sure you have a good balance between your delivery and your slides. You can also use visual aids like video or images, because those are going to be really engaging for your audience as well. And you can encourage people to participate through interactive elements like polls or quizzes like we did at the beginning as well. And I'm going to mention this again, check in with your audience throughout, continue to check in, because the last thing that you want is to get to the end of your presentation and realize that you lost your audience 5 minutes in. So just make sure throughout to stop, pause, ask if there's any questions, if everyone has any feedback. Just make sure that you continue to engage your audience. It's also good to call people by name, because it creates a sense of personalization, and it also gets people to actively participate as well. So this isn't always possible, but if you can use people's first names when you're asking them to participate, it's really effective. And also track participation as well. Take notes on who's participating throughout your call, because it holds people accountable. And then at the end, when you're doing follow-up actions, you can assign things to people based on their participation throughout the meeting as well. Managing your time effectively is really important. Your audience time is very valuable. So if you've booked a 1 hour meeting, you don't want to go over that 1 hour. So make sure that you practice your content and know how long it's going to take to deliver it. And if you can't hold yourself accountable to the time, then ask a colleague to do that on your behalf, because it's incredibly important to stay within the time you've booked. And finally, you should balance your delivery and your discussion. So the amount of time that you allocate to content delivery versus engagement, there's no fixed rule, but if you don't know where to start, the 70-30 rule is a good starting point. So essentially 70% of your meeting should be your content delivery, and then the other 30% can be dedicated to engagement and Q&A at the end. So if you don't know where to start, that's probably a good starting point. Any questions with the first two stages before we move on to the third, or comments in the chat?
Just Robin Dusak continuing to reinforce the importance of checking in with your audience to make sure they're engaged throughout. Mm-hmm. And Abby says, bait them into participation by using leading questions.
That's a good one too. Or bribe them.
Yeah, exactly. There will be draws for people who participate, or I've been to training things where they toss you a chocolate bar or something like that if you were participating in the meeting. Mandy Morrissey suggests using, if you're using videos or polls, make sure you have practiced and are comfortable switching between the content and the technology, because there can definitely be hiccups if you're not doing that fluidly. Really good.
That's
I think the other thing is, was to
Go ahead, Tammy.
prepare if you don't know sort of what the feel of the room is going to be and you're looking to draw participation. For those of you who have been on these calls, you know I will call on Rob because I know Rob will participate. So I will sometimes, give a heads up. Hey, I don't know how this is going to go, but if we don't have a lively bunch, I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to poke you. I want you to kind of, so that you've given people a heads up that you've kind of got a silver bullet in the meeting with you, right?
Definitely. I always call that my hype man or hype woman. Always have one of those in the background. Okay, let's move on to the last stage, Steph. So the last stage of the arc is closing the show. So you can start with a recap summarizing the main points covered during the presentation and check out by asking your audience if they have any final thoughts or questions. You should then outline next steps and make sure that you clearly assign owners to those next steps and deadlines to make sure that everything is actioned. And another important one after the call, make sure that you follow up with relevant resources. So if you have used a PowerPoint as a visual aid, send that to your audience. If you've recorded the call, send it to them as well so that they can access it again. And if there's any other resources that are going to help with the understanding of the topic, make sure to send those through in your follow-up as well. And finally, as a best practice, you should always ask for feedback so that you can improve on things that didn't work and replicate things that did. The way that you're going to improve your presentations is continuously asking for feedback. So always make sure that you incorporate that into your presentations. And with that, if there's not any more questions, I will pass over to Rob to talk a little bit about tips on in-person presentations.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. So there's a few bullets on the screen. I'm not going to talk about everything on this slide. I'm going to talk about first knowing your audience. I'm going to talk about rehearsal, and I'm going to talk about eye contact. So the first thing you need to do is, to Julia's last point about closing the show, you got to remember that this show isn't about you. It's about your audience, right? You're not there to perform. You're there to serve your audience. So knowing what they care about is really, really important. If you're presenting for a room full of salespeople, you're going to have a different flow and a different talk track than what you would use if you were demonstrating for operations people or IT people, right? So whether this is a customer presentation or a client presentation, sorry, Patty, or whether it's an internal sort of training presentation, you need to connect your talking points with what your audience cares about. So how do you actually do that? Well, if you are part of that audience, obviously you're a salesperson, so you know what salespeople tend to care about. So that's an easy one for you. But if you're presenting to a marketing team, you might want to talk to somebody who's in marketing to say, hey, if you were getting a presentation like this, what would you want to hear? Or if you've got an ally within the group that you're going to be working with, or alternatively, if you've got somebody who you think might be a sniper in the meeting, and you can actually get time with that person ahead of the presentation you're going to be delivering, where you can do a dry run of your presentation for somebody who's actually going to be in the room and get their feedback, you can sometimes turn somebody who might otherwise be a detractor into somebody who's going to be supporting you in the meeting, or somebody who is likely to be supporting you anyway, to give you some really good tips and tricks as to how you can engage the rest of the team. So knowing your audience is super, super key. The other thing that's really important is rehearsal and knowing your own content. This is really critical to when you're delivering a presentation live in a room, right? Because you don't necessarily have, although we've already been admonished to not look down at our notes when we're delivering the presentation, you've got other resources available to you when you're doing a virtual meeting that you don't necessarily have when you're face to face. So you need to know your content. You need to be the master of your content. And if you're not down pat with everything that you're going to say, you're going to get in trouble, or you're opening yourself up to risk when you get in front of that audience. So what I would say is rehearse your presentation on camera. Set up your cell phone across the room and deliver the presentation the way you intend to deliver it to your audience. And then once you've done that, watch it on mute, right? And just look at the way you're moving and your facial expressions and the way you move your hands and the way you walk around if you're doing that, right? Then watch it, but with your eyes closed, and just listen to the words that you're saying. Try and see if you hear any filler words. We've talked about some of those already in the chat. Try and hear your pace. Are you varying? You're talking really fast versus when you want to emphasize a point, are you slowing down? So, and then you can evaluate your own presentation style, right? And make those improvements as you go along. The other thing I would say about rehearsal is try and get access to the space where you're actually going to deliver your presentation ahead of time. That way you can get a sense for how much space really is there, how far away from me are the seats actually going to be, and how much moving around can I do, right? You want to avoid standing in front of an overhead projector or whatever the case may be. So where am I actually going to be able to move and get comfortable with the space from that perspective? And then finally, what I wanted to talk about is eye contact. So obviously, when you're in a virtual presentation, it's easy to make eye contact with your audience because all you have to do is look at the little white light on your laptop. Makes things pretty easy. But when you're in a room full of whatever, 20, 30, 100 people, you can't just stare at one person the entire time, or hopefully you don't do that because that might be a little bit intimidating for that person. You need to sort of bounce around your eye contact through different parts of the room, maybe not, and different individuals within those sections of the room. And you're constantly watching for engagement from them or disengagement. If you find that whatever you're saying isn't resonating with your audience, you may want to pivot or change your presentation style to ebb and flow with what's going on in your audience's mind. So I've been told that I'm pretty good at making eye contact. I'm a red in the insights profile, so I tend to make a lot of eye contact naturally. Some would say too much eye contact, but it's important that you bounce around that eye contact because that's how you connect with people when you're physically in a room together. So those were the 3 points that I really wanted to cover on this slide. The other thing that I will just touch on briefly before we move to the next is the use of humor, right? So humor is a great way to form connection with people, but it's also risky, right? What you don't want to do is make a joke that pokes fun at anybody else. What you want to do when you're in a presentation and you say, I want to use humor to create connection is self-deprecating humor is the only safe kind of humor, right? Make fun of yourself. That's why, anybody who's been at any of the digital sales kickoffs will notice there's a lot of jokes about Rob being bald and being an elder millennial and that kind of stuff, right? That's the only safe kind of humor. So I'll move to the next slide. Awesome. And of course, if you're looking for an example of how to perform a fantastic presentation live on camera, I would say book yourself a live streaming demonstration with one of your clients and you'll get a great opportunity to see fantastic presenters in their element presenting Xerox technology. So, and hey, you might actually add a few
Rob,
extra dollars to your paycheck as well.
we've got a lot of new people potentially on the call that have maybe been here a day or a couple of weeks. Can we just give a show of hands if you have not experienced or booked a virtual demo? I just would love to see what that looks like.
Who has not seen a live streaming demo?
Okay, Marissa has not, so she's only been here a couple weeks.
Stefan has never. He's been here a million years. Holy cow.
Stefan, okay.
Perfect. Let me just scroll the chat.
So
here and see.
Marissa Deli, I'm just scrolling over. I just opened it up. Stefan, Lisa Odell, Felicia. Okay. Those 5 folks on the phone have not got to experience all the goodness of the live streaming demo. So we need to, make sure they understand what the options are, how to use it, and really, especially in a couple of these key roles like definitely Felicia, definitely Deli. I can see Stefan. We could definitely probably I would say in a federal capacity, definitely there's an opportunity. So, okay. Sorry, that was improvisation.
Improvisation at its finest.
That's the word, improvisation.
Give me a non-geographic location. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so demo team is a fantastic example of a team that has been performing these demonstrations and these presentations 8 hours a day for the last 10 years. So if you want to see experts in action, it's a great place to start, and also make yourself a few bucks in the meantime. Next slide, please. Awesome. So as promised in some of our earlier tips, we've also sourced some resources for everybody. Toastmasters has a club in St. John. They're a fantastic organization, and you want to talk about somebody who's going to really take your presentation game to the next level. Fantastic organization for that. And we've also got links to some different books and Percipio e-learning courses, which tend to only be 20 to 30 minutes in general, for you to go and actually learn how to do this stuff. But frankly, the resources are there. It's a great place to start. The best way to level up your presentation skills is to get out there and do it. You're not going to get better at presenting by doing an e-learning course or reading a book. You have to get in front of some audiences. Volunteer to present on something you're passionate about to another team in our organization, right? Book a meeting with Tammy and tell her you're looking to get better at presentation skills and you want to present to her on a topic. There's all kinds of people in this organization who would love to learn about what other people do as part of their jobs, and also would love to help you out and help you get better at public speaking and virtual presentation. So I think the next slide is Q&A. Perfect. Totally awesome way to close deals. Thanks, Robin. Percipio is huge. Thanks, Abby. The course or book can help supplement the current skills. Good one. Yep, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
I actually got fired from my first job at 15 because I was too shy to talk to anybody. And I don't think that's anything that anyone would say about me anymore. So really don't
Yes,
be
I think
afraid to
you've
step out of
overcome
your
that at
comfort
this
zone.
point, for sure.
I think so too.
Rob, I love some of your ideas that you shared about, you only get good at something if you do it and do it frequently, and then really take the opportunity to either ask for feedback or do feedback yourself. And I loved your ideas about watching it and watching it on mute. Really interesting concept. Somebody like me, I am quite animated when I talk. And then really love the idea of, completely reversing it and putting the volume on, but closing your eyes and really seeing how effective you are in your messaging. And I think over the course of, as long as I've been presenting and, working with some really great presenters, I think the ones that always kind of rise to the top for me are the ones that, have gotten over the bit of the nerves. There's that for a little while, but then the ones that are just prepared. They take the time, and that literally will change the dynamic of a presentation, because it's all about, I think, your confidence in delivering on the content. When you're confident and you know your slides, you've built your slides, or whatever topic you're delivering on, I think hands down it comes out in spades in terms of how captivating that is to an audience. So I'm a huge advocate of role playing, whether it's to a customer, presenting to a group like this, delivering, some uncomfortable feedback, whatever it is, always role play it, because it's always going to benefit you. As weird as it kind of feels in the moment, it will definitely pay off in spades when you get to that point. So really great
100%.
ideas. Liked it a lot.
And I've worked with presenters in the past who have resisted that whole idea of preparation, right? They don't want to invest that time. They're like, hey, I'm good. I know what I'm talking about. I'll just get in front of this audience and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound scripted, right? That's usually the objection. I don't want to sound like I prepared anything. You don't want to sound like you invested time in, preparing for a fantastic presentation
Professional
for this audience.
athletes spend hours and hours and hours practicing and whatever. Do you think they'd go out to a big event without preparation? So I actually think it makes you more able to kind of like not kind of go off script, because if you're not really prepared, you're going to kind of just go with what you've got, right? What you've prepared, as opposed to really knowing it and being able to kind of ebb and flow, because I think that really shows who has the ability to take, Rob, if I think of an example, when I got to look at you when I'm talking, when you presented to Steve Vanderzak, okay, in your X Factor, how
Oh
many
yeah.
times did we go through the questions? And then we went through, okay, what's the answer? What's the right answer for this? And we rehearsed it and we dry runned it, and literally Rob was as prepared as he could be, but it doesn't matter because Steve completely goes off script. So what Rob thought he was going to respond to in this answer, he already answered up here, so he had to completely come up with something. So knowing his content allowed him to execute flawlessly, and nobody would have known that he didn't go off what was Rob's script, right? Because he was just that prepared. So I think
Yeah.
that's a really good example.
You prepare to the point where it sounds natural.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
delivering a value proposition on a cold call. Yeah, the first 20 times you deliver it, it's going to sound stilted and canned, but then you're going to get to a point where it just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Lori had a question about how do you deal with being nervous? I think that part of that is practice, because
Yep.
if you know your content, you're going to be less nervous about delivering it. Does anyone else have any tips about being nervous and how to prepare for that?
I actually had someone tell me that breathing really helps, and I kind of laughed at it, but it really does. If you go right before your meeting and take like 3 really big like belly breaths where you kind of hold it and then just like let it out, and you do it 3 times, and you make sure you do it before every meeting, it actually calms you down a little bit. You're still going to be nervous, but it just centers you a little bit more. It actually works.
Breathing helps with a lot of things.
I've actually tried dancing before going into a really big meeting too. Like when you're sitting there and you're just super nervous and you're just getting all in your head, just jump up and do a burpee or just dance for a second and just sort of get yourself out of that negative space right before the meeting. So that's another.
I think there's a lot of things that go with positivity. Like, you know what? I know I took the time. I know I prepared for this. I know I'm going to slay this presentation. I like really psyching yourself up. I think a lot of positivity goes a long way. Those people that completely are like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. My heart is pounding. That doesn't necessarily come across when people present. Like, we've had numerous people get up and deliver kickoffs, and they'll be like, oh my God, I was so nervous. And I'm like, well, you didn't come across nervous at all. So I think a lot of it sometimes is telling yourself, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to deliver this, really, really well. And it doesn't necessarily come off as much as you're physically feeling the nerves, as opposed to actually seeing the nerves.
I think one of the main points for me is just shifting your perspective on those things that you're seeing in your body, like you're feeling your heart pound, you're feeling your palms sweat, and reminding yourself, like saying out loud, I say this out loud every time I get on stage 3 times. I'm not nervous, I'm excited. I'm not nervous, I'm excited, because that changes your perception of those things that you're observing in your body. And then you can go on stage with that more confident perspective of, I'm not nervous that I'm going to fail. I'm excited to deliver the message. And then that comes through in the presentation, and you can channel that energy towards your content.
Absolutely.
I'm still terrified of presenting, says Natasha Isaacs-Hanlon.
I would say most people are terrified of presenting, or they feel like they are and they get all those feelings. But especially with a virtual presentation, the feedback is generally, oh, I didn't know you were nervous at all. Right? So you may be feeling it, but it's not always coming across on the presentation or to the person you're presenting to. So that's something I like to tell myself too. Like, I may be nervous, but they're probably not seeing it on the outside. So you're okay. It's okay. I say that to myself a lot. You're okay.
And most people presenting are going to be a little bit nervous. And I think everyone in the audience would be in the same boat, right? So there is some understanding, I think, from the audience. If you are nervous or if you make a little mistake, they're not going to view it as, oh my gosh, you made a big mistake. They're just going to view it as, I could have done that too, being nervous myself.
Exactly. Everyone's human.
Okay. Well, I don't see anything else in the chat, and I think that's just about all the content that we had to cover for today. So I think, maybe the wrap up is, folks, if you got anything out of this presentation, take away the fact that you need to get out there and do more presenting. Don't just attend this meeting and write stuff down and not do anything with it. Get out there and take the opportunity to present in front of some audiences, and that's really what's going to take you to the next level. Okay,
Great
thanks for
session,
taking the
guys.
time.
Great.
Thanks,
Rob, if
everyone.
one of you could send me the
Thank
deck
you.
and I'll be able to send it out
I'll
with
send it over,
recording.
Tammy.
You got it.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Robert. Great participation. Very interactive. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, team.